Everybody, today we're going to be going to our third name on the list. His name is Enos. First was Adam, second was Seth. Now we have Enos, E-N-O-S. He was born in 235 AC, meaning 235 years after creation, meaning the beginning of the earth. And then we have the definition of Enos, which is man, or mortal man, or sick, or despaired of, or forgetful. We're going to be touching on those definitions and how they relate to the year 235 in AD, and how it relates to the year of his death of 1140 AC, and how it ties into both 1140 BC and AD. So let's get started. First, we have where it says 235 AD, and we have Maximus and the crisis of the 3rd century. Feel free to take your time to go to Google and look it up. I'll give you a few seconds. Alright, is everybody there? I'll give you just a couple more seconds. Alright, so let's get started. Maximus, we're going to start with talking about him. He was a man that they called a mountain of a man, which is why I chose to use him, since Enos stands for man, and a mortal man at that. And Enos and Maximus have this in common. So, next it said he was the largest man to ever hold an imperial office, and it was called the Historia Augusta. And it states that he was 8 foot 6 inches tall. It's pretty tall, 2.6 meters. And so strong that he could pull an ox cart on his own. Maximus was a harsh man, too harsh they say, perhaps. And he had many military achievements and marks, and more. So he was a brutish, illiterate peasant, and many historians are the ones that describe him as that. And they also describe him as extraordinarily brave and physically overwhelming, and an ideal soldier. Historians were clearly right in their opinion that Maximus lacked what it needed to be an emperor, apparently, though. And he began his career as simply a soldier in the Thracian auxiliary unit. And his legendary physical prowess had him rise up the military ladder. By AD 232, he might have commanded a legion based in Egypt and played a leading role in the campaign against the Parthians by Alexander Severus. And he briefly became governor of the reconquered province of Mesopotamia. Another reason why I chose him for the name Enos. Mesopotamia has a lot to do with the Middle East, because it is the Middle East. It's a large portion of the Middle East. And what's in the Middle East? Israel. So Mesopotamia was in charge of that area during this particular time, which is why I'm choosing this person to talk about. So, in AD 235, that's where we're talking about, he was on the Rhine, which is a river, in command of a force of recruits from Pannonia, and when the payments to the Alemanni enraged the army against the emperor of Alexander Severus. Was Alexander generally seen as a weak commander with doubtful achievements in Mesopotamia? Then, now the army's men saw a stern, also military leader in Maximus. So, I guess you could say they're looking to make Maximus their new leader and to kick out the one that they don't like. So the army revolted, killed Alexander Severus, and made his mother Julia Mamaea. Oh, didn't make his mother. They revolted and killed both him and his mother, Julia Mamaea, and proclaimed the giant Maximus emperor. So they were despaired of by the current emperor. So they got sick of him and got rid of him. Thus, Maximus takes his place. And another thing that is important about Maximus is that during his time and a little bit after his reign, this started the general decline of population, technological knowledge, and standards of living in Europe. During this period became the archetypal example of societal collapse for writers from the Renaissance until recent times. And as a result of this decline and the relative paucity of historical records from Europe in particular, the period between the fall of the empire and the Middle Ages became known as the Dark Ages. Thus, we enter forgetfulness, or forgetful, being deemed Enos. All of this ties directly into the meaning of his name. So this period of time was predicted by the definition of a name. And how was it predicted? Same year that he was born, in the after death, his birth was repeated. His definition of his name was repeated. As you'll see throughout all of these names that we've been discussing in these videos, events are repeating themselves. They talk about in the end times that it will be like in the days of Noah. Maybe it's based off what Noah's name means as well. I think it could be a very good possibility. So, it's just interesting. And then it says that this age of Dark Ages, a term displaced in most current periodizations by the introduction of late antiquity. I don't think you even really need to know that. I think I just did that for the heck of it. So those are how Maximus is related. And that crisis of the 3rd century, well, let's find that. Give you a few seconds to try to find something on Google so you can try to follow along. You don't have to, but I have it here, so give me just a second to find Crisis of the 3rd century, also known as military anarchy or the imperial crisis, started in 235 AD. And it was a period in which the Roman Empire nearly collapsed under the combined pressures of invasion, civil war, plague, and economic depression. Sounds kind of like mortal man's involvement here. Because I guarantee you, if it was under God's control, none of that would be taking place. despaired of during this time. They're forgetful, sick. The reason I chose to say sick right there is because, well, plague. That's all you need to hear for sickness. Plague is a sickness. Now let's go to 1140 AC after creation, and that is when Enos dies. So let's see, there should still be stories related to Enos during this time. One of them, Second Babylonian Empire starts. Yeah, that's definitely got to do with man, mortal man. Forgetfulness, because they forget who their Lord and Savior is. Babylonian Empire is known to be God's enemy. I could say that they have sick and twisted thoughts in their head, because Babylonian Empire is known for debauchery and doing things that were considered abominations. People despaired of that empire. And then you have Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz story that takes place at approximately 1140 BC. Ruth chapters 1 through 4 is where you can read about them. It's a very wonderful story. It's a story of a Moabite woman. Moabites are from the line of Lot, Abraham's, I think it was his cousin. Anyway, he's in relation to Abraham. And the Moabites came from one of his Lot's daughters doing incest with their father, because there was no other holy man within their region that they could choose from. So they chose to go with their father, and of all people. Can't really say that if you got no other choices, I guess go with your best choice, right? Anyway, the story of Ruth as it goes, Naomi's husband and both her sons died that were married to two women. One of the women is Ruth, who happens to decide that she's going to follow after the ways of Naomi. Naomi's gods will be her gods, and her ways will be her ways, so on and so on. Basically, she's going to be her daughter forever. And through this interaction, both Naomi and Ruth become blessed, and it is by the way of Boaz. Where is it? Boaz and Ruth's connection. Ruth is considered to be a Gentile, whereas Boaz is from the line of David. So you're interconnecting the two. Thus, you continue the line up to Jesus' birth. Line of Jesse. So, man, mortal man. And by the death of Enos, they're no longer going to... There are 3 different deaths in this story, and they're all related to Naomi's side of the family, which is of Jewish descent. What happened is her husband ends up choosing to go away from their homeland, forgetting their homeland, because of a famine, and they go to a different land where there is food, and Basically, while they're there, everybody dies. Everybody gets sick and dies, other than the women. And then the famine comes to that land, so the women come back to their homeland, which is now fruitful. And not all the women, just 2 of them. And thus a love story is made, with Naomi benefiting by Ruth giving her child to Naomi to replace the ones that she lost, and Ruth and Boaz becoming a couple. There is also 1140 AD that we have not discussed. And during this time, you had the blood libel against Jews begin in Norwich, England. So what is the blood libel? The blood libel or blood libel is an accusation that Jews kidnapped and murdered the children of Christians in order to use their blood as part of their religious rituals during Jewish holidays. Historically, these claims, alongside those of well poisoning and desecration, have been a major theme of the persecution of Jews in Europe. So it's the reason I chose this one is because I would say it's a sick practice, and it was something that led to the despair of the Jews. And it's a false accusation dealing with man, mortal man, the first sin. They pass the blame and everything. It's a act of man. And there you have it. That is Enos. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you continue to watch these videos and learn from them, and how there is prophecy within a name. Thank you very much. Have a good night and day, wherever you're looking at it from.